Have we got everybody we need?
Yes.
Got one,
Gonna be late.
okay.
Yes. So the Charlottesville City Council meeting for September 5, 2023 will come to order. Ms. Thomas, you call the roll, please.
Counselor Payne,
He sent an email saying he is in transit. He's running late from, I don't know what his prior destination was, but he'll be here soon.
okay. Counselor Pinkston,
Here.
Counselor Puryear,
Here.
Mayor Snook,
Here.
Vice Mayor Wade.
Here.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve or to amend the agenda?
I move for approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so let's cast your vote, please. Passes 4-0. Great. This meeting, as always, will be divided into 3 main sections. First is a work session to hear and discuss presentations that do not require a council vote. Then there will be a closed session, typically around 5:30. Then the City Council business meeting, which will begin around 6:30. And today at the 4 o'clock docket, we just have one item, and that is the development of our strategic plan. And for that, we have City Manager Sanders and Michelle Ferguson from Raftellus to present to us. Who wants to start things off?
I'll start as Michelle is making her way to the microphone. And I'll also give David a little direction because I forgot. Dave, if you could pull up the packet and turn to the strategic plan page. We want to just have that on the screen as Ms. Ferguson is making her presentation. So councilors, this is your magical moment where you get to consider adopting your strategic plan. This is some long, hard work that we've been working with the Raftellus group to get done to make it possible for you to have codified your strategies for the next 5 years is the window that we're describing for this period of time. It gives staff the ability to work on implementation. So immediately upon your adoption of this matter later this evening, we will begin to operationalize it. Our goal would be to try to implement this as quickly as we possibly could and bring back additional opportunities for you to make different decisions if there were any that need to be made to needle or pinpoint some of the things that you have identified here. So Michelle has done some great work in helping us get this done. She's worked with staff as well as each of you over the past few, months? I guess it's been months to get this done. So she's going to walk you through the overarching framework. There have been a few questions about, is this all of the plan? No, this is the beginning of it. This is really how you set the vision, and then we as staff will take it from there. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. As the manager said, while this may not be all of the plan, I would submit that it is, however, the most important parts of the plan. Because the framework that you all have outlined, and that's now up on the screen, really includes the key direction. That's really the vision. Where does the community want to be? Where do you want the community to be over the next 5 years? And as the manager said, so that staff can ensure that they are in alignment with that vision and those strategic outcome areas that you all have developed. He mentioned that it's been a couple of months, and it certainly has. They have been important. It's been important to take the time necessary to develop this strategic plan. I'm sure you all will remember from several months ago as we began this process, when we talk about strategic planning for a community, it's really intended to answer 3 key questions. Where are you today? Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there? And as you may recall, this process started actually back in the spring. We had an opportunity to meet with the leadership team of staff to begin to engage them in this process. I had conversations with each of you early in the process to understand your expectations and to get your sense of some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges that this community and this organization face. We also surveyed city staff to get their input on the mission of the organization, why the organization exists, what the purpose of this work is, and understanding what the key organizational values are for the employees, for how they treat each other and how they interact with the community that they serve. And so all that process culminated into what we call an environmental scan. And when we had the opportunity to meet with you in a retreat setting for 2 days back in May, graduation weekend, we spent some time going through that environmental scan to answer that first question, where are you today as a community, and answer that second question, where do you want to go? And so as a result of those 2 days that we spent together in May, you all outlined the framework that you see on the screen that includes the vision as well as 9 strategic outcome areas. And we talk about those things as what are those things that must go well in order for that vision to be realized. In the conversation, it was very clear that justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion were truly core values to all of the work that this organization engages in. And so there was an interest in ensuring a very strong commitment to justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and you see that as part of the overarching framework. And in some ways, that becomes your 10th outcome area. Each of those outcome areas will be viewed through the JEDI lens, but it'll also serve almost as an additional outcome area as the organization continues to work to operationalize many of the strategies that are already in place. After we spent time together in May, then our team spent time with staff. And we reviewed those outcome areas to ensure that there was understanding by the part of city leadership on what you were envisioning when you developed those 9 outcome areas and the commitment to JEDI as part of the framework along with the vision. And the staff has begun to develop the detailed strategies that go along. These are important outcome areas. Again, they set the direction along with the vision, but then there's action. And I know that you all are interested in the action piece of it as well too. And so staff has been working very diligently to develop the specific strategies for each of those outcome areas to ensure that those are realized. Those include not just new ideas and new strategies, but really articulating some of the strong foundation that's already been developed in this organization, particularly in these 9 outcome areas, and 10 if you add JEDI to that as well too. So that gives you a sense of kind of the process that we've gone through over this last handful of months that has resulted in this framework. And as the manager said, he's already begun working with staff to operationalize this plan and ensure that you all, as well as the community, are kept informed of how the activities and strategies that the organization employs are reported back out to you on a quarterly basis so that you have an opportunity to review progress toward achievement of not just the vision, but each of those outcome areas as well too. So with that, I certainly turn it back over to you, Mayor, and to the council if there are questions or comments or conversation around the framework as you all have developed it so far.
Council questions?
I think we did a good job.
It was hard work.
I like where we ended up, and thank you all for your help with that. Can you remind me what happens next, or maybe this is for Sam to answer, but once we agree on this, then there's some sort of way of making it actionable?
Yeah, I figured that would be one of the big questions for this evening. So you will actually have an action item tonight. It was my desire that based on the work that we have done up to this point, feeling as though that you all were on the same page as to what the strategic outcome areas needed to be, feeling confident that we have captured them there, then I will be submitting this for your adoption tonight. That is the most important next step. Beyond that, it is to begin working with staff. So tomorrow, actually, the lead team will be meeting, and I'll be going over this with them, just highlighting for them. These are the strategic outcome areas for those that were able to participate in the process. It'll be a little refresher for them because they got a glimpse of this as they were doing some of the other work that led to the strategies and measures that we have begun to assemble. But there's a lot more work to be done. What I intend to do at this moment is I'd reached out to Michelle and asked her about implementation. It was not a part of the original scope for Raftellus to continue beyond this moment. She has provided me a scope, and I have confirmed that we do have money available So the goal would be for me to work with her on making sure that the scope fits within the amount of money that we have available, and I'd like to keep her on board to be able to work with staff as we develop what the operational plan will look like. What I'd share with her was that I'm also working with you all, as you know, on developing my own work plan for what my responsibilities are in performance, and I intend to tie it directly to this document here. So, and Michelle referenced there being 9, JEDI being the 10th. So when I bring that final document back to you later this week, you'll see that I'm framing it that way. So I'm going to live by this document, and then the team will be expected to live by this document. So that'll be how I'll ask all the departments to begin to identify how they're doing their work in relation to these strategic outcome areas, so that they see what they're doing as rolling up to what you set as the vision. Beyond that, I would say that we have a lot of work to try to capture what are all the various strategies, actions, and measures that we want to have in place. And by looking at this as a 5-year window, then we start to break down in annual increments. What do we take on this year? What do we take on next year? What can wait for a few years? There'll be some decisions that'll have to be made. We'll be coming back to you, of course, asking for money to do certain things, to explore certain things, and to then be able to support making this come true. And then even by the time we get to year 4, I would imagine we would say, the world has changed yet again. So while it's a 5-year plan, this already is beginning to not work, and let's start thinking about teeing up the next plan. That's what my experience has been in strategic planning. I imagine that this will be no different, but ideally what we want to be able to do is to keep everyone connected to this being our guiding light. This is really where we're headed. That's what this is all about. What is it that you want to see happen? And then we'll give you some meat to chew on.
I just had a couple of comments. One is, I had mentioned that I really felt that food equity should be part of it, and I'm looking at it could be under partnership and or the JEDI, but I just think that the word food equity should be included. I'm just seeing more and more reports about how that inflation is really impacting that, and our effort last time played a big role in organizations like Cultivate Charlottesville and things like that. I just think that the word food equity should be included somewhere in there, so that when they're applying for grants, or potentially we, that we can specifically maybe point to it where it is in our strategic plan.
Sure.
So that's just my thought, and hopefully if we could wordsmith something before 5:30. I'm sorry, 6:30, and my other question was, my comment was, those quarterly reports, and I know it hasn't been fleshed out yet, but what do you envision those looking like an actual report, or like where someone tells us, or a report that we'd read and we can comment if we have it?
I would imagine that we would more or less produce a written quarterly update. It would be an attempt from staff to just kind of speak to what are some of the various deliverables that have been achieved, what are some things that we have found. But I wouldn't eliminate the idea that there could be a presentation of some kind as well. I think as we've done enough work down the road, it might make sense for myself or someone else, depending on who I task with being the person in charge of this. But, that could become one of the deliverables down the road. But what I would say to you is that you will at least get a quarterly update speaking to how we're making progress towards whatever of the things will be highlighted for that period of time. It's not to suggest that something could happen in all 10 areas every quarter that would be of substance to then spend time reporting on. But ideally, what I'd like to do is just keep those lines of communication open with letting you know how we're doing and even what challenges we may be facing.
Okay. And my last one is just kudos to your staff for the drawings that, when we were doing it that weekend, just kind of sketching out ideas on paper. It was really unique. I hadn't experienced that before, but it was really powerful to actually see our thoughts and our vision in that format. So thank you.
Glad it was helpful.
So I'm glad to see item number 10. I'm interested in finding out from you and or Mr. Sanders, what matrix are we going to use with number 10 to make sure that JEDI is happening in the 9?
So I will say to you that, one, I can't tell you what matrix we use yet, but we're going to work on that. When I received this document back initially, I immediately thought that JEDI obviously is going to land as additional work. It's not within alone, there's more to it. I'll tell you that Deputy City Manager Marshall and I had a robust conversation about JEDI and that particular section, that commitment statement. There's work for us to do. I think what we will bring to you will be satisfactory in that we will break down what is made up in that particular commitment as we see as operational things that can be done. And then, of course, it then falls under each of the 9 categories. That equity is the conversation that Ashley's been charged with having, period. Ideally, what we want to do is to make sure that we're having some measurements identified under each of these categories that fit into that same space, and they then roll up to that commitment to demonstrate that it's truly a commitment.
Okay.
I would say to you also, Vice Mayor Wade, that while we don't have food equity called out specifically, it does fall under the JEDI category. What I think we need to do is to break down what is all encompassing within that JEDI section. And I think food equity could be a line item. There's actual diversity work that needs to be done and inclusion work that needs to be done. So I think there's the definition of pillars that you might be able to see if you think about it that way. And that I believe that we can do that sooner rather than later in a way that to demonstrate any of our partners that we intend to continue to work with them in doing that work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just say that I think I would be comfortable with working on that approach to embracing food equity. I have to say that if I look at the strategic outcome areas, to me, it's hard to think of food equity as exactly as important as those other 9, but it is also something that can be seen as perhaps infiltrating a lot of those 9. And that's a better place, I think, to put something in the category 10, so to speak, would be things that infiltrate the other 9.
And it is a little more natural to be under partnerships as well. I'll give you that. As Vice Mayor started with, it could be there. Yes, it absolutely would be there along with a whole host of other things. But I do think food equity has its place under that commitment for JEDI very easily.
And I'm sorry for being a few minutes late. But just 2 cents, I think food equity could even be under economic prosperity, under a strategy for community wealth building, which I know is how Cultivate Charlottesville has explicitly thought about it. I think there's real potential there, but definitely agree it's a huge, important priority. I don't have much to add. I mean, I think the strategic outcome areas are broad enough to encompass everything we work on. I don't see anything necessary to add to it. I know some of it is very ambitious in terms of the language, but I think it's good we've laid that out as an explicit goal, and I'm just curious to see how we kind of more narrowly define some of the goals and deliverables. Sure. But I think this encompasses everything I wanted to see.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add, I think even in some of the conversation you're having this afternoon, it's reminiscent of the conversation you had at the retreat. It is hard to think about these outcome areas independently, because there is so much overlap. None of these things can be done independently. In almost all of these areas, there is that overlap. What the framework does is help, as Councilmember Payne said, it provides some clarity and some robust goals for the organization to aspire to, for the community to aspire to, and it is inclusive in that most of your organizations and the community that you serve can see how the things that are important to them are reflected in the things that are important to this governing body. And so I think the broadness is purposeful, and as is the ambitiousness of what's in this plan.
It feels that way.
One thing that struck me as I was looking at the page is that I was trying to decide whether it was even possible to, and decide it was not, to try to figure out whether the placement of things on the page suggested any order, an order of importance or an order of a sequence of action. And I decided that one of the nice things about this was that it really wasn't capable of of, calling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the one that was at the absolute center was organizational excellence. And that if we do in fact achieve that goal, the other 8 become much more possible.
I like your assumption about why that was done that way better than what mine was, and it was probably the designer who couldn't fit them in that same order. But I very much agree with your sentiments.
I will be happy to ascribe higher motives.
And I will take that visionary direction and use that tomorrow when I talk to the lead team. I think that was great.
Yeah, it's really true, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, I have long been a sort of a cheerleader for the city staff and their competence in many ways. And therefore, I think it gives me particular license to fuss at people who aren't being competent, but that's another story. But generally, it's been excellent. And I think that that's one of the things that it truly has been the case, that the excellence of the staff has enabled a lot of other things to happen that, I just look at the places around the state. Of course, in my line of work in criminal defense law, I see all of the places where things have absolutely blown up. And that's not been happening here. So anyway, good job, everybody. Any other questions or comments?
So you're thinking maybe a month or so, or 2 months to come back with sort of where you guys are shaking out with your,
Yeah, so
the more granular piece of this and the plan going forward?
right, and keeping in mind that this is the level for council, is this framework setting. So this is really the extent of your work, and then the rest is then incumbent on us as staff to then implement.
Right.
What I'll do is I will be rolling out to you, and I'll probably spend some time picking out groupings of these and bring back to you just some things to take a look at, just to see kind of where we're headed.
Okay.
Make sure we're not missing anything. Ideally, I want to take stock in understanding if we're missing a strategy that you all think is an appropriate strategy. As Councilor Payne said, food equity fits under economic prosperity. Test for me would be to make sure that I come back with some angle for that, and then he can tell me, yep, that's it. I think that's a way for us to do it. And if not, then he can tell me what he thinks that is. I can do that. It wouldn't necessarily be in this big open forum in this moment, but what would happen is for the public to then appreciate is when we're there, there'll be a document of some kind that we'll produce. And that'll be where the measures are there, and then I'll actually just I'll plan to update you on some schedule so that people can take a look at that.
Got it.
And I do think it's also important to keep in mind that the framework, what you see on this one screen is to a certain extent the tip of the iceberg. That there's so much below the surface, as the manager talks about, working with the organization to actually implement and make progress in all of these areas. So it may seem like it can all fit on one page, but that should not be thought to reflect the amount of work that goes into actually making progress on these things. And I know based on my conversations already with the leadership team, they have lots and lots and lots of ideas. And I think the manager's challenge is going to be to help corral some of those into what is reasonable to accomplish in periods of time, so that you see demonstrated progress in each of these areas.
Okay. Anything else to do? Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we will take a vote later on in the 6:30 meeting. But for now, I guess we really have nothing else to do on the 4 o'clock agenda.
So is it closed session time?
I guess so.
it is.
All right, lots of excitement. Thank you for the presentation, and safe travels back. You're headed back to Durham. All right, so this is the motion for a city council closed session. I move the city council close this open meeting and convene a closed meeting as authorized by the Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A8, consultation with the city attorney regarding legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice, specifically legal matters regarding notice and public hearing requirements for the adoption of the city's new zoning ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? If not, shall we vote? Okay, motion passes 5-0. We're now in closed session.